Hey, how the heck are you? Jonathan here, the Fish Room Addict, and today we're going to jump back in to the 55-gallon build. We got, I've got my sweet tea here. You gotta have the sweet tea, and what we're going to do today is we're going to start carving on the block that we glued together. So, in the last video, we glued it together. We got the back painted on the 55. So now we need to get it carved to how we want it, and then we're going to put some concrete down. So we've got a lot of work to do. Little time, or actually, we've got a lot of time to get there. We're quarantined in because of the coronavirus, so we've got all kinds of time. And I guess if I have to be quarantined, the fish room is the most perfect place to be, right? So let's just get to it. Let's get to carving. All right, so this has had time to dry all night long. As you can see, since the cut of the last section of the video, last night I was kind of goofing off, and I had these pieces, and I actually went ahead and kind of started cutting to fit it to the tank or whatever. And so I had some extra pieces, and I had this idea that I'm gonna try giving it some extra definition, I guess, basically. So, anyways. Basically, now that this has had time to dry all night, it's solid. What I'm going to do is just start cutting and carving on it. I'm not going to sit here. What I'll do is I'll just hyperlapse it a little bit where, you can kind of see what I'm doing, but I'm not going to go into great detail because that can be kind of monotonous. What I use is, oddly enough, a fish fillet knife. I've got a razor blade and a pair of scissors as well, just if I need them. You don't really have to have anything real sharp for this. It cuts fairly easy. I've used a kitchen knife and that works as well. So as far as the design of it, just kind of go with it. When you get the basic building block of what you're wanting set, just kind of let your imagination run on it. There's not any right or wrong way of doing this. Just kind of go with what you have in mind. That's the beauty of fish tanks, is it doesn't really matter if it pleases anybody else as long as it pleases you. So yeah, that's about the best advice I can give you as far as designing this and cutting it out. And you got to just kind of remember too, it's going to look a lot different once we start putting the cement on it. So yeah, let's get going on this. Again, I'm just going to do a little hyperlapse, and if I see anything that I think I want to point out, I'll pause it and let you know. Alright, so the hyperlapse didn't really show a whole lot of detail, so I just wanted to kind of give you a little bit of close-up here real quick before we start getting into the cementing of this, of kind of the definition, the crevices and different things that I did with it. You can go much crazier with this. I'm kind of impatient some, so I, kind of cut it, made it simple, I guess you could say. And I may actually, before we do it, I may actually add a couple more little spots, but I don't know. You can see, I kind of had the idea. There's some little dips here. I'm gonna, some plants can go in too. So just kind of give you some idea of what I've done as far as some definition to it. So, all right, I'm gonna get some concrete mixed up, and I'll show you what we're gonna do with that. So there's a lot of videos out there about making your own backdrops and different things as far as the concrete goes. I'm not a concrete guy. I don't know really anything about it, but I've done this on the background before, like we've seen, and I've learned from that. So this is how I do it. It works. Just want to throw that disclaimer out there first. But another thing that I want to go ahead and head off, I will not be putting any cement on this back part. So looking at, the main thing, the very back here, I will not be putting any cement there or here. And the reason why is I'm going to probably use some silicone to hold that down in there. With this being styrofoam, it's got a lot of buoyancy, so it's going to float up even with the cement on there. So I'm going to put a few dabs of silicone to help hold that into the where it's not floating up out of the paint. So before a couple disclaimers here before we get going. What I'm using is some old grout mix. When we moved in here, there was some leftover laying in the shop here. So lucky for me, I can use it. I've got just a couple little old plastic buckets that this one I'll mix in, and I got some extra water here. And what I use is a paintbrush to put it on. I've used a little I guess you could call it spatula, I don't know. Putty knife, there we go. So you can use that too, that works. I think it's a little bit tougher in my opinion, but anyway. The first coat, I'm gonna go a little bit thinner of a mix just to get it to start sticking onto here. And then the next couple of coats, I'm gonna actually put probably 3 to 4 coats of pretty thick cement on here. And we'll see kind of how it goes as we start setting up. Yeah, the first coat's gonna be fairly thin just to kind of get it to soak in to the crevices in different places and try to get a base to start from. So I'm gonna go ahead and start mixing some of this up. And this, I think I started to mention, this is grout. I know people use other different concretes. Now I will say, be careful. Like at Menards, they sell like a bag of concrete mix, like a 60-pound bag, and it's really cheap, but it's got tons of gravel in it. And from what I found, and it's like, I think it's like a couple dollars, $3 or $4 for a 60-pound bag of it. But I wasn't able to get it. I couldn't get it to work at all. Like it had tons of like little pieces of gravel in it, and just couldn't get it to work for me. So anyways, this grout for me, it's real smooth. You can see, I don't know if that video is going to pick it up real well. It's real fine. It's like a powder. So another thing you're going to actually want to get is I use a paint stick just to stir it with. So once you get a little bit of, I always start with a small amount. There's a couple handfuls of that in there. And then I just add, same thing with water, I just add a little bit of water and then mix it, and then kind of just start figuring out what consistency I want. All right, so for the first coat, you can kind of see. I'm gonna try to show you here. I've got it pretty runny there. I mean, it's got some grit to it, but not a ton. And so for the first coat, that's all I'm really after right there. Just a little bit of thickness, but you don't want it necessarily running off of your surface, but you don't want it real thick and hard to do anything with on the first coat either. So I'm gonna dip the paintbrush in there. Also, you're gonna probably want some cardboard if you ain't got a place to do this. This gets pretty messy. So, and then just basically all you do is just start dabbing it on, getting it on there. Try to put as thick, thick as you can on there with it being so thin. But and this first coat, the grout I'm using is pretty light. So, but I'm going to change that a little. I'm going to add a little bit of paint to it later on the last couple of coats just to give it a little bit more color. And I want it to be a little bit darker, but I want the back of it, the base of this, to be fairly light. So. All right, so we have one coat of concrete on here, and it's dried. It dried overnight. I don't know if you see that, but it doesn't look much different. It's just got a little bit more texture. It's still pretty soft. If you push on it too much, you're gonna crack it. It's got a couple little cracks already starting, but that's okay. We're gonna cover it over with a little bit thicker of a coat. Remember, that first coat is a pretty thin layer of that concrete. What I'm gonna do now, I did not do this on my last build, but what I'm gonna try, just to see if it works and how it turns out. This next application, you can tell it's quite a bit thicker. Still got a little bit of runniness to it, very slightly. I don't know if the camera will see that or not, but quite a bit thicker than the last batch. But what I'm going to do, I want to try to get a little, like, some different layers of color in it this time. So like this, the base is going to be pretty white. The next layer, this is like a pewter gray, and then I'm going to do like a black on the last part. So I'm just going to add just a little bit to this, just see how it turns out here. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to do the same thing. We'll see what it looks like when it starts drying. I'm just going to do a time lapse of the next application of this. These next couple of applications are going to be, it's going to be a little bit harder. It's going to take a little bit more time because it's going to be a thicker paste. So it's not going to paint on quite as easily as what you did a while ago. It's just going to take some time, and you may have to you can, if it starts hard enough, you can always add just a couple drops of water to it and get it softened back up. But, all right, I'm going to get started on this, and I'll let you know what it looks like when it gets done. All right, so there's 2 coats on. That has set overnight, and it's had time to dry now. And we're going to do a 3rd coat. This next coat, I'm going to do the same thing basically as the 2nd coat. It's going to be a thicker coat than the very first one. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some black paint to it to help bring out or give some more definition. If you look, there's still some of that whiter look, peppered through it here and there. It's probably harder to see on the video than it is, but you can kind of see the texture, and it's gotten quite a bit thicker. I'm not going to push too hard, but it's got, it's gotten quite a bit harder. So that 2nd coat definitely strengthened it up quite a bit. I did lose a little bit of with that thicker coat than the first. I did lose a little bit of my depth. So like my lines that I kind of carved in there, I've lost a little bit of that. Not terrible, but maybe my advice there would be go a little bit deeper if you want some like definition or deeper lines or anything. Maybe, or just kind of go lighter coats on those maybe, and just not go so heavy, like so thick in those spots. So I don't know. Somebody else that's done this a lot more might have a little bit more advice there. So I'm gonna get this mixed up. I'm gonna do the Hyperlapse again. We're gonna do the 3rd coat. We're gonna let it dry overnight, and we'll see where it's at. Hopefully that's gonna be enough, and then we'll let it soak. If not, we may have to look at doing some painting or getting some different color. We'll see what happens. Alrighty, so here we are. I've got it finished up. I actually did end up going ahead and putting one more coat on. I did not film that because I think you pretty well got the gist of that by now. But I did go a little bit, and I went a little bit darker than what it was going on. Something to make note of real quick. This typically, depending on the color that you choose, when this is wet, it's going to look quite a bit darker. You can see over here on the side where it's a little bit darker. It's because some of this rock still had some moisture in it, so it's soaking that up. So keep that in mind. It is going to be a little bit darker as when it's wet. So I think all in all though, it turned out pretty good, like I was, what I was hoping for. So it'll look good with some plants planted. I think I'm going to use some of those driftwood pieces somehow on it. I don't know. I may find some other ones, and then of course over here to this side is going to be some sand. So yeah, I'm gonna wrap this video up. It's getting pretty long. If you found some use out of this video, if you liked it, give me a like. If you want to keep up with my builds in the fish room, hit that subscribe button. And in the next video, we'll go through siliconing that down, get the sand put in, and probably go ahead and start getting some water running through this. So until the next one, we'll see you then. Thank you.